guys, my name is Steph. Welcome back to my Intro to Python series. Today we're going to focus on loops and conditionals. First, we're going to look at the loops. There are two things you need to know. There's a loop statement and a loop body. The loop statement defines the value to be true, and if that's the case, then anything in the loop body is going to be repeated either a definitive or indefinite amount of times. That could mean that it's going to repeat a certain set number of times before the loop breaks, or it's going to meet a certain criteria before it breaks that way. Alright guys, once you've opened up Trinket, we're going to create a new Trinket over here on the right with Python. Let's get into our first code. When dealing with loops, you're most always going to deal with variables in every code you deal with, unless you're just printing text. So we're going to create a variable right off the bat. We're going to name it A. There we go. A equal to a random value. I'll put 0 just so it's in simplest terms here. Now we can move into the loop. Using a loop statement, this could be while. So then while lit up in pink because it recognizes it in the database to be a loop statement there. Anything that comes after while, we're saying while blank is true, do this. So we're going to say while A is less than 3, that's our loop statement, but to actually make it a functioning statement, we always need to remember a colon. That'll actually make it work, otherwise we will get an error message appear. And then if we hit enter, do you see how it indented it right away for us? Anything that's indented under while, that's our loop body. Everything in that body is going to be repeated while the statement is true. Right now, the statement is always true because A is set to a fixed number. Let's say print A. If we run this right now, you'll see what happens. 0 is going to print forever because 0 is always less than 3 and we haven't changed that variable whatsoever. So to make this a good loop statement that's going to make changes, we're going to say, let's change our variable up a bit here. A is equal to A plus 1. So now, every time we enter, when this code runs the loop statement, it goes down, it prints A, and then it changes the value of A by 1 each time. So that means that now, A will no longer always be less than 3. So the code is going to have to, the loop is going to have to break at some point. Let's give it a go. There we go. 0, 1, 2. It didn't go all the way to 3 because 3 wouldn't have been less than 3. That's less than or equal to. Alright. If you want to see how the whole inside the loop, outside the loop thing works, you can always test that out by printing a little message to yourself inside the code and outside the code. Just give it a go. We'll say print inside the loop. And that's still indented, so it's inside the loop there. Every time this code is ran and the statement is true, then this message is going to be printed. But I'm going to come out of that loop now. So I take away that indent, and I'm going to say print outside the loop. Perfect. So now once we finally break free of that loop, this message will finally be printed, but it will not be printed until this statement is false. So you'll see here what happens. We'll hit run, and it prints inside the loop, inside the loop, inside the loop because 2 is still less than 3. But once A is equal to 3, it's going to tell us outside the loop. Perfect. All right, good job, guys. Now we're going to talk about conditional statements. A conditional statement is also known as an if statement, and it means that if blank blank is true, or if blank equals blank, then we will follow that line of code from there on out. We want to start by setting all of our variables. So for this example, we're going to make a guess the number game. I'm going to want a variable with the answer in it. So we're going to title that answer. We're going to store a random number in there, such as, we're going to store an integer in there, and we're dealing with all numbers. We want to be able to compare the numbers, so let's make sure that we have it stated that it's an integer. int is the acronym for that. Integer 6. You could put any number you want in there though. Let's go down a line. We're going to make another variable now. This is going to be guess. And this variable, we're going to store user input in this one. Let's say input, since we're using user input. And we're going to say guess a number between 1 and 10. There we go. So that will prompt our user to guess a number. Now we move into our if statements. Let's say to do an if statement, which is conditional, you start with if, and it already picks up on what we're saying here. It recognizes the conditional statement. If answer. Now we're going to use two equal signs here because we're not saying answer is guess. We're not setting guess equal to answer. We're not trying to make a variable there and store the guess in answer. We're trying to say if answer is compared to guess. We're comparing the two. That's what two equal signs do. So if answer equals the same number as guess, and for any statement we need a colon, and it automatically indented for us. Just like our loops, anything indented under that statement is going to be part of the body. It's going to go down that path. So if answer is equal to guess, let's say print you were correct. Now one thing we have to look back on to double check our code is we set answer equal to an integer 6. Our guess, when the user inputs a number there, that's an integer too. So we have to go back up here and put in the same acronym, int bracket, and then since we added an extra bracket here, don't forget we need another one over here as well. And let's give that a run, see if it works for now. Guess a number, let's say 5. All right, perfect. Nothing was supposed to happen because we have nothing else, no other statements in there. Let's make sure 6 works though. There we go. Okay, we're on the right track already. Now, obviously we're not always going to get the right answer, so let's make a new statement. Let's say elif. Elif stands for else if. So if the conditional statement for answer equal guess is not true, then we're going to skip over anything underneath it that's indented, and we're going to go straight to our next statement and see if that's true. All right, so elif guess is less than answer, and we need our colon, and we're indented, can't forget to do that. We're going to say print you guessed too low. We can give that a try. Say 3, you guessed too low. We're gonna try an else statement now. So with an else statement, the elif is what you use. The elif you'll use before the else. Else is your final point in the whole conditional statement. And you don't have to put in anything else under, like next to it. You don't need to make it a conditional or anything, because if any other answer is given that's not stated in the elif or the if statements, then it's going straight here. So else, colon, and we're already indented, so that's good. And we're just going to say print wrong choice. And really, you could add another elif statement of guess is greater than answer. Make sure we change the contents a little bit though. If guess is greater than answer, print your guess too high. Run. Let's pick 2 too low. All right, let's try again. 8. Nope. And finally, there we go, we got it. Great job, guys. As you can tell, we're never ever going to reach the else statement because the answer is either going to be too low or too high, but that was just for example purposes. Anyways, thanks for following along. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial.